Humans naturally draw invisible lines in the sand. We subconsciously categorize the entire world into chaotic, unpredictable environments and tightly controlled safe spaces where we can finally let our guard down. The deepest kind of psychological terror rarely involves the supernatural. It happens when that carefully constructed bubble of safety is deliberately punctured by human malice. Psychologists observe a phenomenon called proximal threat escalation. As a threat moves closer to our physical body and core identity, the psychological damage increases exponentially. We map this vulnerability across 3 layers: the outer boundary, the physical perimeter, and the inner sanctum. True horror sets in the moment you realize these physical and geographic boundaries are merely an illusion, leaving you completely exposed to a predator. When we travel off the grid, we cross into the outer boundary. Out here, the only remaining sanctuary we have is the distant concept of civilization itself. Consider a hiker who ventured hours deep into an isolated forest, only to encounter a supposedly harmless town eccentric named Hector. Standing near the exact location of a historic, unsolved murder, Hector abandoned his usual quirky behavior. He stood completely still, talking to himself in multiple distinct voices, some weeping, some raging, before charging the hiker in a dead, screaming sprint. Or take a group of friends exploring the remote woods who stumbled upon an abandoned, windowless cabin. Beneath the floorboards, in an unnaturally cold, dark room, they found a man aimlessly dragging his foot in circles, entirely silent, staring upward with lifeless eyes. Both of these men operated with absolute impunity because they understood their environment. They relied on the extreme geographic isolation of the deep woods to strip away their victims' social safety nets, ensuring that no local police or bystanders could possibly intervene. In the wild, the horror is the realization that the geographic isolation you sought for peace is exactly what a predator requires for control. As we move closer to home, we enter the physical perimeter. In suburban neighborhoods, we place blind trust in the wooden walls and locked doors of our houses to keep the danger outside. But attackers adapt. One college student returned to his quiet hometown only to be repeatedly stalked by an out-of-season ice cream truck. The harassment escalated until 3 a.m., when the student looked out his bedroom window to see the driver standing completely still on his front lawn, flanked by 2 small, mysterious children in the dark. In another instance, a man home alone heard metallic banging in his backyard. Looking out, he saw a young child repeatedly striking a patio chair with a PVC pipe. He went to the back door to help the seemingly lost kid, but a gut feeling made him pause. He peeked through the blinds instead. Waiting silently against the siding were 2 grown men dressed entirely in black, crouching in ambush. These encounters suggest a tactical use of vulnerability. By introducing figures that naturally trigger a desire to help, like an out-of-place vehicle or a child in the dark, a predator bypasses the logical skepticism we usually reserve for strangers. The physical security of a house is rendered useless when a predator successfully manipulates our human nature to convince us to unlock our doors. Finally, we reach the most vulnerable layer, the inner sanctum. This is the psychological space where deadbolts and quiet streets offer zero protection. A BMW salesman learned this when he started receiving phone calls late at night from unknown numbers. Instead of a person speaking, he heard a static-laced recording of his own voice, playing back private, one-sided conversations he had just held with clients earlier that exact same day. This infiltration creates a unique form of disorientation. Because there is no visible intruder to confront or escape, the primary survival instincts have no clear target, leaving the victim in a state of suspended, directionless dread. The psychological toll was rapid and severe. Within days, the salesman had barricaded himself inside his home, sitting alone at his kitchen table with a loaded handgun, waiting in the dark for an invisible threat that never actually arrived. When a malicious anomaly successfully infiltrates our private communications and mental space, the home stops feeling like a fortress and starts feeling like a cage. The invisible consequence of these encounters is that the illusion of safety never truly returns. Survivors forever view quiet hometowns and locked rooms as inherently vulnerable spaces. How do you protect yourself when walls fail? Psychologists point to a cognitive process called thin slicing. The human subconscious processes microscopic environmental anomalies, triggering a sharp physical alarm before the conscious mind can even identify what the specific threat is. This precise mechanism is what saved these victims. It was the subconscious recognition of the unnaturally silent cabin, the out-of-season ice cream truck, the strange staging on the porch that stopped them from stepping directly into a trap. Modern society trains us to be polite, to ignore those sudden flashes of dread, and to logicalize our way out of fear. But these stories prove that rationalizing away a bad vibe can be a fatal mistake. The predators of the real world are entirely human, and when physical boundaries fail, trusting your primal intuition is the only sanctuary that actually works.